The desert sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Route 17, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the empty highway. Dust devils swirled in the distance, kicking up grit that stung the eyes of anyone foolish enough to stare too long. In a rundown motel on the outskirts of Blackridge, a town forgotten by time, 8-year-old Lily huddled in the corner of a dimly lit room. Her small frame trembled, knees drawn to her chest as the door rattled under heavy fists from the outside. The man beyond it, her uncle, or whatever he called himself, bellowed threats that echoed like thunder in the thin walls. "You ain't going nowhere, girl! Get out here!" Lily's eyes, wide with terror, darted to the cracked window. She knew the signal. Her mother had taught her before the accident that took her away 2 years back. A subtle twist of the wrist, fingers forming a silent plea for help. It was their secret, born from whispers in the night about bad men and the need to reach out to strangers who might care. Outside, the growl of a lone motorcycle cut through the stale afternoon air, a deep rumble that vibrated the motel's flimsy foundation. Ethan Ghost Harlan pulled his weathered Harley to a stop at the gas pump, the engine ticking as it cooled. He was a man carved from the harsh edges of life, mid-40s, with a salt-and-pepper beard framing a face etched by old scars, one running jagged across his left cheek from a knife fight in his army days. The Hell's Angels patch on his leather vest gleamed dully under the sun, a symbol of the brotherhood he'd sworn to after losing his squad in a desert ambush overseas. That night, as the sand turned red around him, he'd made a promise to a dying brother. "I'll watch out for the lost ones, the ones who can't fight back, on my honor." It was a vow he'd buried under years of riding solo, numbing the ghosts with the wind and the road. But promises like that didn't fade. They waited, patient as the horizon. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, the scent of gasoline sharp in his nostrils, when movement caught his eye, a flicker through the motel's grimy window. There she was, the girl, her face pale against the shadowed room, twisting her wrist in that unmistakable sign. It hit him like a punch to the gut. He'd seen it before, in war zones and border towns, a code among the vulnerable to flag down those who understood the unspoken language of desperation. His hand froze on the pump handle. The uncle's voice rose again, slurred with anger and something darker, the door shaking harder. Lily's eyes locked on Ethan's for a split second, pleading, before she vanished from view. He didn't think, he acted. Killing the pump, he strode toward the motel office, his boots crunching gravel, the weight of his old Colt tucked in his belt, a cold reminder of choices best left buried. The clerk, a wiry man with yellowed teeth, barely looked up from his magazine. "Room 12's occupied. Pay up front if you're staying." Ethan leaned on the counter, his voice low and steady like gravel under tires. "That noise coming from there. Girl in trouble." The clerk shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "Ain't my business. Family squabble, probably." But Ethan's instincts, honed by years of reading the room in hostile territories, screamed otherwise. He pushed past, heading down the breezeway, the air thick with the tang of stale smoke and neglect. At room 12, the door burst open just as he approached, revealing the uncle, a burly figure with bloodshot eyes and fists clenched, dragging Lily by the arm. She yelped, a sound that twisted something deep in Ethan's chest, echoing the cries he'd failed to silence in the past. "Hey!" Ethan's bark cut the air like a blade. The man spun, surprise flickering before hardening into defiance. "This ain't your fight, biker trash. Get lost." Lily's gaze met Ethan's again, her free hand flashing the signal once more. Urgent, desperate. He understood everything in that moment. The bruises hidden under her sleeve, the fear that had stolen her voice, the isolation of a child caught in a web of neglect. Stepping forward, Ethan positioned himself between them, his broad frame blocking the doorway. "Let her go, now." The uncle sneered, shoving Lily behind him, but Ethan's eyes never wavered. "You touch her again, and you'll answer to more than me." The words carried the weight of his promise, the one that had pulled him from the bottle and back onto the road. This wasn't just a stopover, it was a reckoning. Tension coiled like a spring as the uncle sized him up, the motel courtyard falling silent save for the distant hum of traffic. Lily slipped free in the distraction, edging toward Ethan, her small hand brushing his vest as if anchoring to safety. He didn't flinch, didn't raise a hand in threat. Justice for him was never about the fight, but the stand. "Kid, you safe with me?" he murmured, voice softening just for her. She nodded, tears carving tracks down her dusty cheeks. The uncle lunged, but Ethan sidestepped, grabbing his arm in a grip forged from survival. "Walk away," he growled, "or call whoever you need to, but she ain't staying here." As the man backed off, muttering curses, Ethan knelt to Lily's level, the sun dipping lower, painting the scene in golden hues. "What's your name?" "Lily," she whispered, the first word she'd spoken. In that instant he knew. This signal, this chance encounter, would bind him to a path he couldn't ignore. He'd ride for her, call in the crew scattered across the states, the angels who owed him their lives. By dawn they'd converge, not for vengeance, but for the honor of keeping a promise to the lost. Word of the standoff spread like wildfire through the Brotherhood's encrypted channels. Ethan's phone buzzed in his pocket as he led Lily to his bike, her hand tiny in his calloused one. "Ghost, you in trouble?" came the voice of Jax, his old vice president, from the heart of Nevada. "More than that," Ethan replied, glancing at the girl who now clung to his side. "Got a little one who needs us. Rally the wings." As the engine roared back to life, the promise stirred fully awake, pulling him toward a horizon laced with moral storms. Blackridge's lights faded in the rear view, but the real journey, the one of redemption and unyielding loyalty, had only just begun. What secrets did Lily carry that would test the very soul of the angels? And how far would Ethan go to shield her from the shadows closing in? The highway blurred into a ribbon of black under the deepening twilight, the Harley's throaty roar a steady pulse against the cooling desert air. Ethan kept one hand firm on the throttle, the other occasionally glancing back to check on Lily. Strapped securely in the sidecar he'd jury-rigged from spare parts years ago. Her small face, smudged with dust and drying tears, peered out from under the helmet that dwarfed her like an oversized crown. The wind whipped at her ponytail, carrying the faint scent of wild sage from the roadside scrub, but she didn't complain. Instead, she clutched a frayed, stuffed bear to her chest, its button eyes glinting in the fading light, a talisman against the uncertainty ahead. Ethan's mind raced faster than the bike. The uncle's curses still echoed in his ears, but it was Lily's signal that haunted him most, replaying like a looped reel in his head. That twist of the wrist, so deliberate, so ingrained. It spoke of lessons learned too young, of a mother's foresight in a world that chewed up the innocent. He'd pulled over at that motel on instinct, chasing a ghost of his own, the memory of his little sister, lost to a similar neglect before he shipped out to the sands. The promise he'd made to his dying brother in the war, watch out for the lost ones, had felt abstract until now, a chain pulling taut around his heart. But what shadows clung to this girl? The uncle's rage hinted at deeper rot, perhaps debts or grudges that extended beyond one run-down room. As the miles ticked by, Ethan's phone vibrated against his thigh, the burner he kept for club business. He pulled into a deserted rest stop, the gravel crunching under tires as he killed the engine. The sudden silence amplified the chirp of crickets and the distant howl of a coyote. Lily stirred, rubbing her eyes. "Are we there yet?" she asked, her voice a fragile thread in the night. Ethan dismounted, kneeling to her level, the leather of his vest creaking. "Not yet, kid. But we're safe. You hungry?" She nodded shyly, and he rummaged in his saddlebag for a protein bar and water, the metallic tang of the canteen sharp on his tongue as he took a swig first. The call was from Jax, his voice crackling over the line like static from a storm. Ghost, what the hell's going on? You pulling us into some family drama? Jax was a bear of a man, mid-30s, with tattoos mapping his arms like war stories. Another vet who'd found solace in the roar of engines after losing a leg in the same ambush that scarred Ethan. They'd built the local charter together, a tight-knit crew of 15 angels scattered from Blackridge to the Nevada line, bound by oaths thicker than blood. "It's more than that," Ethan said, his gaze fixed on Lily as she nibbled the bar, crumbs dusting her lap. "Little girl's in real trouble. Signals like she's been running from worse than an uncle. I need eyes, Jax. Rally who you can. Quiet, no noise." Jax paused, the weight of the ask hanging heavy. "You know what this means. Cops'll sniff around if it's custody stuff. We ain't vigilantes." Ethan's jaw tightened, the scar on his cheek pulling taut. He thought of the institutional walls he'd seen crumble under corruption, bureaucrats who'd looked the other way, while kids like Lily slipped through cracks. "Ain't about badges. It's about the code. She signaled me, brother. I understood." There was a beat of silence, then Jax's grunt of affirmation. "By midnight we'll have 10 riders. Meet at the old crossroads. But Ghost, you sure this ain't your ghost talking?" Ethan hung up without answering, the question burrowing like sand in a wound. Back on the road, the stars emerged like scattered diamonds against the velvet sky, the bike's headlight carving a path through the dark. Lily's questions came in fits and starts, her voice gaining strength with each mile. "Mommy said to look for good strangers, like knights on horses, but with loud ones." Ethan chuckled softly, the sound rumbling from his chest. "Bikes are better than horses, faster too." But her words stirred unease. What accident had taken her mother? The uncle's slurred threats suggested booze or worse, a cycle of neglect Ethan recognized from his own fractured youth. He'd grown up in a trailer park much like Blackridge, dodging fists until the army offered escape, only to deliver new scars. They reached the crossroads as the moon crested the horizon, its pale glow illuminating a cluster of headlights in the distance. 10 bikes idled like patient beasts, their riders silhouetted against the night, hard men with softer cores, etched by lives of quiet sacrifice. Jax pulled forward, clapping Ethan on the shoulder, his eyes flicking to Lily with a mix of curiosity and protectiveness. "This the signal, girl?" A nod from Ethan, and the crew formed a loose circle, engines purring low. Among them was Marcus, a former firefighter with burns hidden under his sleeves, and Lena, the only woman in the patch, a nurse who'd patched up more than wounds in her ER days. She knelt by Lily immediately, offering a gentle smile. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm Lena. You like stories?" Lily's eyes lit up, the first real spark Ethan had seen. As the group conferred in hushed tones, a new vibration buzzed. Another call, this one from an unknown number. Ethan stepped aside, answering with a wary, "Yeah?" The voice on the other end was gravelly, laced with menace. "You the biker who stuck his nose in at the motel? Girl's mine to handle. Bring her back, or we'll make it ugly." The uncle, or someone tied to him, Ethan could hear the undercurrent of leverage, perhaps a network of lowlifes preying on the vulnerable. He glanced at Lily, now laughing softly at Lena's tale of a brave fox, and felt the promise solidify. "She's under our wing now. You come looking, you'll meet the storm." Hanging up, Ethan returned to the circle, the air thick with the scent of exhaust and resolve. "Trouble's comin'. We ride to the safe house in Eldridge, old warehouse off the grid." The engines revved in unison, a symphony of loyalty that drowned out the doubts. As they rolled out, Lily rode with Lena this time, her small hand waving back at Ethan. The road ahead twisted like fate itself, promising tests of honor and heart. But in the Brotherhood's thunder, Ethan found redemption's first echo, a family chosen, unbreakable, ready to stand against the gathering dark. How deep did the uncle's web run? And what truths would Lily's secrets unearth? The night held its breath, waiting. And now I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The convoy thundered through the night like a living beast, headlights slicing the darkness in a jagged line that stretched across the barren flats. The air grew cooler as they left the desert's grip, carrying the sharp bite of pine from the encroaching hills. Ethan's Harley led the pack, its engine a low growl that harmonized with the chorus behind him. 10 bikes weaving in formation, a shield of chrome and leather against whatever shadows pursued them. Lily rode pillion with Lena now, her arms wrapped tight around the woman's waist, the stuffed bear tucked into her jacket like a secret weapon. Every few miles, Ethan caught glimpses in his mirrors, the girl's head bobbing slightly, lulled by the rhythm, while Lena's voice murmured reassurances lost to the wind. Eldridge loomed as a ghost town reborn, its main street lined with boarded-up shops and faded neon signs that flickered like dying stars. The safe house was an old warehouse on the edge, its corrugated walls rusting under the moon's indifferent gaze. Once a hub for mechanics, tinkering with engines that could outrun trouble, it now served the Angels as a bolt hole, stocked with cots, canned goods, and a generator that hummed to life with a reluctant cough. Ethan killed his engine first, the sudden quiet amplifying the crunch of boots on gravel as the crew dismounted. Jack swung off his bike, rubbing his prosthetic leg with a wince, the metallic clink echoing his unspoken weariness. "Perimeter check," he ordered, voice steady but edged with caution. Marcus and 2 others fanned out, their silhouettes merging with the night, flashlights cutting narrow beams into the underbrush. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of oil and aged wood, dust motes dancing in the beams from hanging bulbs. Lena guided Lily to a corner piled with blankets, the girl's eyes wide as she took in the space, shadows playing tricks on crates stacked like forgotten sentinels. "This is our castle for tonight," Lena said softly, kneeling to help Lily settle. "No bad dreams here." Ethan watched from the doorway, his frame filling the threshold, the weight of the day's choices settling like lead in his chest. The threatening call replayed in his mind, that gravelly voice laced with possession, hinting at a tangle far stickier than a single uncle's grudge. Who else knew about the girl, and why did her signal feel like a key to doors he'd long sealed shut? As the crew gathered around a scarred wooden table, maps unrolled like battle plans, Lily's voice piped up from her nest. "Mummy said the signal was for knights who keep promises." The room stilled, all eyes turning to her. Ethan crouched nearby, his scarred cheek catching the light, making the old wound look like a map of its own. "What else did she say, kid? About the bad men?" Lily hesitated, fingers twisting the bear's ear, then whispered, "They took her away. Said it was an accident, but she signaled too late. Uncle said I'm next if I tell." The words landed like stones in still water, rippling through the group. Jax leaned forward, his tattooed forearms flexing. "Accident, like what?" But Ethan held up a hand, sensing the fragility. "Easy. She's had enough spotlights tonight." The confession stirred the ghosts Ethan carried. His own sister's accident, years back, a fall downstairs that no one questioned too hard, had driven him to the army, seeking structure in chaos. There, amid the dust and gunfire, he'd learned the cost of looking away. The promise to his dying brother wasn't just words, it was the anchor that kept him from drifting into the bottle's fog. Now, with Lily's story echoing his past, he felt the chain pull tighter. "We need to dig," he said finally, voice low. "Quiet channels, find out what happened to her mom." Marcus nodded from his post by the door, his firefighter's instincts kicking in. "I got a contact at the local clinic. Old nurse who owes me. No names, just patterns." Hours blurred as the crew worked in shifts, the warehouse alive with the soft clatter of keyboards on laptops, and the hiss of a coffee pot brewing strong and black. Lena stayed with Lily, weaving tales of brave riders who outsmarted storms, her nurse's hands gentle as she checked for hidden marks, faint shadows under sleeves that spoke of past pressures without needing words. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the walls like impatient fingers, carrying the faint rumble of distant thunder. Ethan stepped out for air, lighting a cigarette whose smoke curled upward like unanswered questions. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent witnesses to the moral crossroads below. His phone buzzed again, the unknown number flashing like a warning. He answered, keeping his tone even. "You got the wrong ear tonight." Laughter crackled through the line, colder than the breeze. "Wrong? Nah, biker. That girl's got ties you don't want. Debts from her old man, before the accident. Hand her over at dawn or we ride harder." The line went dead, leaving Ethan staring into the void. Debts. It painted a picture of a family unraveling long before Lily's signal, threads of desperation woven into something uglier. He crushed the cigarette under his boot, the ember dying with a hiss, and returned inside. Jax met his gaze, reading the tension. More heat. Enough to burn if we don't move smart. By the time the first grey light seeped through cracks in the walls, plans solidified. They'd split, half the crew to scout Blackridge for traces of the uncle's connections, the rest to escort Lily to a neutral spot. A remote cabin, owned by an old Angel ally, tucked in the hills where signals faded and safety reigned. Ethan volunteered for the escort, his promise demanding he stay close. As Lily woke, rubbing sleep from her eyes, she toddled over, offering him the bear. "For luck," she said, her smile a fragile dawn. He took it, the stuffed toy absurd in his massive hand, but its weight felt right, a reminder that redemption came in small packages. The engines fired up as the sun crested, bathing the warehouse in reluctant gold. Lena rode with Lily again, the girl waving from the sidecar with newfound spark. Ethan led the smaller group out, the road curving into mist-shrouded valleys where pine needles carpeted the asphalt like a soft warning. Behind them, Jax's team peeled off toward the horizon, their taillights winking farewell. The air filled with the rich earthiness of the woods, a stark contrast to the desert's bite. But Ethan sensed the shift, from open pursuit to shadowed intrigue. What debts haunted Lily's past, and how far would the web stretch to reclaim her? The convoy pressed on, loyalty's thunder masking the ethical storm brewing. In the rear view, the safe house shrank to a speck, but the bonds forged there grew stronger, a chosen family rolling toward truths that could shatter or save. As the miles unfolded, a new vibration hummed. Jax checking in. Found a lead. Uncle's tied to some low-rent crew running protection rackets. Girl's mum crossed them. Ethan's grip tightened on the bars, the road ahead blurring slightly. Protection. More like predation. The promise pulsed, urging him forward into the heart of the gathering darkness. Lily's signal had been the spark. Now, the angel's fire would light the way to justice, not with fists, but with unyielding honor. The hills rose like silent guardians, hiding secrets yet to unfold. The mist clung to the valleys like a shroud, softening the edges of the pines that flanked the winding road. Ethan's Harley cut through it steadily, the engine's rumble a comforting anchor in the grey dawn light. Behind him, the smaller convoy, 4 bikes strong, followed in tight formation, their headlights piercing the fog like wary eyes. Lena's ride brought up the rear, Lily's laughter occasionally bubbling up over the wind, a sound as pure as mountain stream water. The girl had taken to the journey with a resilience that tugged at Ethan's guarded heart, her small form bundled against the chill, the stuffed bear now perched on the dash like a vigilant scout. The air carried the crisp tang of damp earth and resin, a far cry from the desert's arid bite, but it couldn't mask the undercurrent of tension coiling in his gut. They'd been riding for an hour when the cabin came into view, nestled in a clearing, where the trees parted like reluctant sentinels. It was a sturdy log structure, its roof sagging under moss and time, owned by Silas, an old angel who'd traded the throttle for a quiet life after a crash, left him with a limp and a philosopher's bent. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, signaling his readiness. Word had spread through the Brotherhood's quiet vines. Ethan signaled a halt, the bikes idling down to a purr as the group dismounted. Gravel crunched under boots, and the scent of wood smoke mingled with the metallic edge of exhaust. Silas emerged on the porch, a grizzled figure in his 60s with a beard like tangled roots and eyes that had seen too many sunrises alone. "Ghost," he greeted, clasping Ethan's forearm in a grip worn smooth by years. "Heard you got a package needs sheltering." His gaze softened on Lily, who clung to Lena's hand, peering up with wide curiosity. Inside, the cabin wrapped them in warmth, the crackle of a fire in the stone hearth chasing away the morning's damp. Rough-hewn beams overhead cast flickering shadows, and the air hummed with the aroma of fresh coffee brewing on a cast-iron stove. Lily explored tentatively, her fingers tracing the grain of a wooden table scarred by countless meals, while Lena unpacked a few essentials from the saddlebags: blankets, a first-aid kit, and a deck of cards for distractions. Ethan pulled Silas aside near the window, where sunlight filtered through grimy panes, gilding dust motes in the air. "She's carrying more than fears, old man. Threats on the line, talk of debts from her pa before the mum's accident." Silas nodded slowly, his voice a low rumble like distant thunder. "Seen it before. Small towns breed big webs. Folks like that uncle run with crews that squeeze the weak for every drop. You stirring the nest?" The question hung as Ethan's phone buzzed, Jax's name flashing. He stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking under his weight, and answered with a clipped, "Talk." Jax's voice came through, edged with urgency, the background hum of engines suggesting he was still on the move. "Scouted Blackridge. Uncle's name's Harlan. Ironic, huh? Tied to a outfit called the Dust Devils, low-lifes shaking down locals for protection. Lily's mom, she was waiting tables at a dive, crossed 'em when she wouldn't play along. Accident? More like they made it look that way. Cops turned blind, small force, deep pockets. Ethan's fist clenched around the phone, the scar on his cheek itching like a fresh reminder. Harlan. The name twisted like a knife, echoing too close to his own buried pains. His sister's fall, dismissed as mishap, had reeked of the same rot. Family ties masking darker hands. The promise to his brother surged, a vow against the tide of indifference. "Any sign they're tracking us?" "Not yet, but they're asking questions. We hold the line." Back inside, the group settled into a watchful rhythm. Marcus, ever the protector, rigged motion sensors around the perimeter, their faint beeps blending with the fire's snap. Lily sat cross-legged on a rug, cards fanned out before her as Lena taught her a simple game. Their laughter a fragile barrier against the encroaching unknown. Ethan watched from a rocker by the fire, the warmth seeping into his bones but not his doubts. The girl's signal had unlocked something primal in him, a redemption he'd chased through empty miles, now crystallized in her trusting gaze. But Silas's words lingered. Webs. If the Dust Devils were involved, this wasn't just rescue. It was unraveling a thread that could snag them all. Justice for Ethan meant exposing the truth without descending to their level. Honor as the blade, loyalty the shield. Midday brought a shift in the weather, clouds rolling in like uninvited guests, muting the sun to a hazy glow. Lily grew restless, her questions sharpening as the novelty faded. "Will the bad men find us here?" she asked Ethan during a lull, her voice small but steady, eyes reflecting the fire's dance. He knelt, the floorboards groaning, and met her level. "Not if we stand together, kid. That's what promises are for, keeping the dark at bay." She nodded, but a shadow crossed her face, hinting at depths yet unspoken. Later, As Lena dozed nearby, Lily whispered to Ethan, "Mommy had a letter. Hidden. Said if anything happened, find the Knights." A letter. It could be the key, proof against the accident Jax uncovered. Ethan's mind raced, piecing fragments. Debts from a father long gone, a mother's defiance, an uncle's grip tightening the noose. The afternoon stretched taut as a bowstring when Silas's old radio crackled to life, tuned to a frequency the crew monitored for whispers. A garbled transmission filtered through, static-laced voices mentioning a biker convoy and the girl from the motel. Dust devils, closing in. Ethan gathered the group, maps spread on the table once more, the scent of pine from the walls grounding them. They know we're moving. Jax's team will draw 'em east, buy us time. But we need that letter, Lily. Where'd your mom hide it? The girl bit her lip, then pointed to her bear. Inside. Lena carefully unzipped a seam, extracting a folded paper yellowed with age, words scrawled in hasty ink, warnings of threats, names tied to the devils, a plea for help from those who ride true. It was enough. Evidence of coercion, not accident. As dusk painted the windows in bruised purples, the cabin felt like a fortress under siege, though no engines growled yet. Ethan stepped out, scanning the tree line where shadows lengthened like fingers. The air cooled, carrying the first patter of rain on leaves, a rhythmic warning. His phone stayed silent, but the promise thrummed in his veins, binding him to this path of quiet defiance. The angels weren't storming gates. They were guardians in the storm, chosen family weaving a net of protection. Lily's secrets had cracked open the past, revealing corruption's underbelly, but redemption lay in the stand, in honoring the signal that started it all. Rain began in earnest, drumming the roof like impatient drums as the group hunkered down. Marcus reported from the perimeter, all clear for now. But Ethan knew the calm was fleeting. The web tightened, debts demanding payment in flesh and fear. How would they shield Lily from the reckoning? The fire popped, casting long shadows, and in its glow, Ethan's resolve hardened. A silent vow to see this through, not for glory, but for the honor that mended broken souls. If you're feeling this story's pull on your heart, smash that like button. It helps these tales of quiet courage reach more lost souls out there. The rain hammered the cabin roof like a relentless barrage, turning the clearing into a slick mire that swallowed sounds and softened the world beyond the windows. Inside, the fire had dwindled to glowing embers, casting a ruddy haze over the room where shadows clung to the rafters like unspoken fears. Ethan paced the worn floorboards, the creak of each step a counterpoint to the storm's fury outside. The letter from Lily's bear lay unfolded on the table, its ink-smudged words a map of malice, names linked to the dust devils, hints of extortion that had driven her mother to desperation. "They watched us," it read in a hurried scrawl. "Won't stop till we're gone." Ethan traced a finger over the paper, the faint scent of old paper mingling with the damp earthiness seeping through the cracks. This wasn't just protection anymore. It was a stand against the rot that festered in forgotten corners, the kind that claimed lives under the guise of accidents. Lily huddled on the rug near Lena, her knees drawn up, the stuffed bear now mended and clutched like a shield. The girl's eyes, heavy with the weight of revelations, flicked to Ethan every few moments, seeking the anchor he'd become. Lena stroked her hair gently, her nurse's touch steady, whispering tales of storms that passed and left clearer skies. But the air inside felt charged, thick with the unspoken. How deep did the devil's reach go? Silas sat by the hearth, whittling a stick into nothing, his knife flashing in the low light. "Boy," he murmured to Ethan, voice gravelly as the rain, "you've kicked a hornet's nest. That letter's a spark. They'll come burning." Ethan nodded, the scar on his cheek pulling tight. He thought of his own ghosts, the sister's fall dismissed by indifferent eyes, the war brother's dying plea that had forged his code. Promises weren't chains, they were lifelines, pulling him from the abyss. A sharp crackle from the radio shattered the fragile calm, Marcus's voice cutting through the static like a blade. Perimeter breach, 2 trucks, headlights off, circling the ridge, dust devils by the look. The words hung, freezing the room. Ethan grabbed his vest, the leather cool against his skin, and motioned to the others. "Lena, get Lily to the back room. Barricade if needed." The nurse scooped the girl up without hesitation, their footsteps quick and soft on the planks, disappearing behind a heavy curtain that divided the space. Silas rose slowly, his limp more pronounced in the tension, fetching a shotgun from above the mantel, rusted but reliable, a relic of quieter defenses. Outside, the rain masked the intruder's approach, but Ethan could imagine it. Engines idling low, men with hard eyes and harder debts, drawn by the promise of reclaiming what they saw as theirs. Ethan slipped onto the porch, the downpour soaking him instantly, cold rivulets tracing paths down his neck like icy warnings. The tree line loomed black against the storm, but shapes moved, silhouettes detaching from the shadows, advancing with the caution of predators. He didn't call out. Instead, he melted into the gloom beside the door, his breath steady, the old Colt a familiar weight at his hip, not for drawing first, but for the line he wouldn't let them cross. Footsteps squelched in the mud, 3 figures emerging from the mist, their jackets marked with crude devil insignias that gleamed wetly. The leader, a wiry man with a shaved head and a sneer that cut through the rain, halted yards away. "We know the girl's in there, biker. Harlan sends regards. Hand her over, and we ride easy." The name hit Ethan like a gut punch, Harlan, the uncle, but twisted into something collective, a syndicate's fist. He stepped forward just enough to be seen, rain streaming from his beard, voice carrying clear over the torrent. "Ain't no handing over. She's under our wing. Your debts end here." The men shifted, hands hovering near pockets, but Ethan's stance, broad, unyielding, held them at bay. In his mind, Lily's signal replayed, that twist of desperation binding him to this moment. Justice wasn't in the storm of lead, it was in the unbreaking stand, the moral anchor against corruption's tide. One of the goons chuckled, low and mean. "Wings? You're just road dogs. Girl's pa owed us big before he vanished. Mum tried to run. Look where that got her. You want the same?" Pa vanished, the pieces slotted into place. A father's flight from debts, a mother's defiance ending in engineered tragedy, an uncle stepping in as warden. Ethan's jaw set, the rain blurring his vision but sharpening his resolve. "We got proof. Your accidents don't stick in the light." The leader's eyes narrowed, rain dripping from his brow like sweat. A radio buzzed on his belt, urgent whispers filtering through. Jax's team, perhaps. Stirring chaos back in Blackridge to split their focus. The distraction worked. The men hesitated, glancing back as distant engine roars pierced the storm. The angel's thunder drawing near. "This ain't over," the leader spat, signaling retreat. They melted into the trees, trucks revving to life in the distance, taillights winking red through the sheets of water. Ethan exhaled, the tension uncoiling like a spring, and ducked back inside. The cabin felt smaller now, the fire rekindled by Marcus's quick hands, flames leaping to dry the chill. Lily peeked from behind the curtain, her face pale, but eyes fierce. "Did the Knights win?" she asked, voice threading the quiet. Ethan knelt, water pooling around him, and offered a nod. "For now, kid, but the promise holds." Lena wrapped her in a blanket, the scent of wool and safety enveloping them. Silas poured coffee, steam rising like fragile hope, and the group gathered close, voices low as they pieced the next move. Jax's check-in came via text. "Diversion worked. Devils scattered, but Harlan's hold up. We're closing." As the rain eased to a patter, the night deepened, the cabin a bastion of chosen bonds. Ethan sat by the window, watching the clouds part to reveal stars piercing the black. Redemption wasn't a blaze, it was this, the quiet vigil, the loyalty that outlasted storms. But the web's heart still beat, Harlan's shadow lengthening. What final test would the promise demand? The fire crackled on, illuminating faces etched with unyielding honor, as the road to dawn promised truths that could heal or break them all. Lily's hand found Ethan's in the dim, small but sure, a signal of trust returned. In that grasp, the angel's fire burned steady, ready for the reckoning. The first hints of dawn filtered through the cabin's rain-streaked windows, painting the room in muted silvers and golds that chased away the night's lingering chill. The fire had burned low, its embers glowing like steadfast eyes in the hearth, while the scent of damp wood and cooling coffee hung heavy in the air. Ethan stood by the door, his silhouette framed against the paling sky, the Colt still holstered, but his senses attuned to every rustle outside. The drip of water from eaves, the faint stir of birds in the sodden pines. Lily slept fitfully on a cot nearby, her chest rising and falling in shallow rhythms, the mended bear tucked under her chin like a guardian. Lena watched over her, exhaustion etching lines around her eyes, but her presence a quiet bulwark of care. Silas rocked slowly in his chair, the creak of wood a metronome to the unfolding weight, while Marcus monitored the radio, its static a low hiss underscoring the fragile peace. Ethan's phone vibrated softly against the table, Jax's name cutting through the hush. He answered, stepping onto the porch where the air carried the fresh mineral tang of washed earth. "We're at the cabin. What's the play?" Jax's voice crackled, laced with the rumble of engines in the background. "Harlan's cornered in an old mill outside Blackridge. Dust Devil's hideout. Cops are coming, but slow. We got the letter copied, sent to a contact who knows how to light fires without matches. Proof of the shakedowns, the threats. He's singing already, spilling about the mom's setup, pushed her car off the road to silence the debts." Ethan's grip tightened on the rail, splintered wood biting into his palm. The image flashed, a desperate woman signaling too late into the void, her daughter's fate sealed in that same shadow. It mirrored his sister's end too closely, a dismissal wrapped in official stamps, leaving scars that time couldn't erase. "You riding in?" "With the full wing, but Ghost, this ends clean. No blood on our hands. Honor first." The convoy's approach built like a gathering storm, the distant growl of Harleys swelling into a thunderous wave that vibrated through the valley. Ethan gathered the group inside, the floorboards groaning under their steps as they prepared. Lily stirred awake, rubbing her eyes, the confusion melting into trust as she saw Ethan's steady gaze. "Are we going home now?" she murmured, voice thick with sleep. He knelt, the scent of rain clinging to his vest, and brushed a strand from her forehead. "Better than home, kid. A safe one, with folks who keep promises." Lena helped her dress in a spare jacket, its leather too big but warm, while Silas loaded a thermos of coffee for the road. The radio spat final coordinates. The mill, a crumbling relic on the river's edge, where rusted silos stood like forgotten titans against the breaking day. They rolled out as the sun crested, mist rising from the valleys in ethereal veils that caught the light like spun gold. Ethan's bike led, Lily secured in the sidecar once more, her small hand waving at the trees as if bidding farewell to fears. The air warmed with the promise of morning, carrying the clean bite of river water and wildflowers crushed under tires. Behind them, the four riders formed a protective arc, engines harmonizing in a symphony of resolve. The road twisted downward, shedding the hills for flatter lands where the desert's edge met the flow of the current, the mill appearing like a spectral outline, its walls weathered grey, windows shattered, eyes staring blankly. Jax's crew waited at the perimeter, a dozen bikes arrayed like sentinels, their chrome glinting under the rising sun. The vice president dismounted, his prosthetic leg steady on the gravel, and clasped Ethan's shoulder. "Harlan's inside with a couple holdouts. Cops en route. Our contact fed 'em the letter anonymously. No stormin'. We witness." The group advanced on foot, boots crunching over shattered glass and overgrown weeds, the river's murmur a soothing counterpoint to the tension. Lily stayed back with Lena and Silas in the tree line, the girl's eyes fixed on Ethan. A silent signal of faith passed between them. At the mill's entrance, shadows shifted within, the air thick with the musty rot of decay and the sharp undernote of fear sweat. Harlan emerged first, flanked by two gaunt figures, his burly frame diminished in the daylight, eyes darting like a cornered animal. The uncle's face twisted upon seeing Ethan, the biker who had upended his fragile control. You took what's mine," he snarled, voice echoing off the metal beams. But there was no fight left, only desperation. Ethan stepped forward, the crew fanning out behind him, a wall of leather and unyielding stares. "She's no one's possession. Your debts, your threats, they end today. The truth's out." Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as Harlan's accomplices melted away, vanishing into the underbrush like smoke. The uncle lunged half-heartedly, but Jax intercepted, a firm hand on his arm. "Save it for the badges. The letter paints it clear. Coercion, the crash rigged to look like fate." Harlan sagged, the fight draining as blue lights flashed at the horizon, officers spilling from cruisers with badges that for once might serve justice over indifference. Ethan turned away, the weight lifting slightly from his shoulders, the promise fulfilled not in confrontation, but in the light of exposure. Corruption crumbled under scrutiny, not fists. A poetic reckoning, moral and clean. As the authorities took Harlan into custody, questions flying like sparks, Ethan walked back to Lily. The girl ran to him, arms wrapping around his leg, her embrace a warmth that pierced deeper than any scar. "The night's won," she whispered, tears mingling with a smile. He lifted her gently, the river's breeze ruffling her hair, and nodded. "We all did, kid. Your signal started it, brought us together." The crew gathered, a chosen family forged in the fire of loyalty, their engines idling ready for the road home. Jax clapped Ethan's back, the brotherhood's bond renewed, while Lena smiled, her nurse's heart eased by the sight. The sun climbed higher, bathing the mill in unforgiving light as the convoy reformed. Ethan rode with Lily close, the sidecar's hum a lullaby against the past's echoes. Redemption had come quietly, in stands taken and truths unearthed, honoring the vow that bridged war's ghosts to this fragile peace. Promises survived, weaving through time like the river below, enduring, unbreakable. The horizon stretched wide, a canvas of new miles, where honor's legacy rode on, silent and profound. Thanks for riding along on this journey of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds. If Ethan's promise touched your soul, hit that subscribe button. We've got more tales of redemption waiting on the road ahead.